Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.
The Anti-Media Radio with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 18th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup of Jewels here on UCY.tv. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is a balmy 49 degrees and sunny here in upstate New York. Smells very springy, but the heat was going on again last night. And they were warning of more frost. So spring has not fully sprung here yet in New York, but I'm hoping so because I'd like to get my plants, my veggies all in the dirt and growing this weekend. So where did we leave off yesterday? We titled the show Synthetic Humans, DNA 2.0 and Cheating Death. And, I almost think we did a show that ended up with almost an identical title probably about a year ago, but it's happening, people. We did lots of updates. We took a look at this new meeting that they had at Harvard discussing creating the synthetic human genome quietly in secret. They're going to be releasing a document looking at whether or not they should be doing this. What was really disturbing as well is that they were talking about utilizing 3D. I don't even know if they even mentioned 3D, but they were utilizing DNA techniques, sequence techniques, where they would be able to use a laser and scan an object of a famous person, such as Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci, find DNA samples that maybe still existed on the objects that they owned at one point in the past, and then sequence that DNA. And then from that DNA sequence, be able to create the synthetic duplicate of what once was originally biological when they were alive, and then clone that synthetic duplicate DNA sequence of that person, such as Leonardo da Vinci or Einstein. I can't even believe it. And then create a copy. When we really started to dig in to what the implications of this all means, not only do we have them pushing robots to take the majority of all the jobs. I was just reading another big story about China, man. They are trying to catch up to Japan with replacing workers with robots. And it's happening faster than any of us know. So not only are they replacing humans with robots, I saw too there was a new software lawyer. I just got hired by a law firm. I don't know. Maybe we'll hop back on the robot bandwagon on Monday. I still have a few more things I want to get to here, digging into the stuff we've been hitting the last 2 weeks. But the robot revolution is well on its way, and now we're looking at synthetic humans. Because, of course, you and I are just so defective. And we found out that just about anything in our environment, any type of experience that we've had, oh my goodness, there was trauma involved, caused some sort of change, effect in our makeup or how our brain works or how our cells express nutrients or whatever. I mean, it's amazing because everything that we'd always kind of known in the gut, I don't mean literally in the gut, I mean like the gut feeling, like we knew that being depressed or being very upset or being very angry or not eating right, did bad things to our body. But now there's proof of it. And what's even more frightening, though, is that the proof shows that it can cause long-term damage and it can cause defects in you that then can be passed down via generations of your progeny. And hey, we don't want defective cell lines in the gene pool anymore, Johnny. You know what? You chose a life of being a rebel and you ate pizza and drank soda, didn't exercise, abused yourself. Well, then I guess you've made that choice to eradicate all the Johnny Smiths or whatever, Jack Blacks off the planet Earth. You will not be allowed to procreate and your line will be eliminated. You would not play the healthy game of the 21st century, which of course is where this is all headed. I've been seeing all kinds of stories now pumping out, of course, something that we talked about before, how beef, carbon output and climate change, factory farming. It's not about how horrible we treat the animals or all the shit we inject into them. It's all the carbon that those cows and chickens produce. It's ruining the climate. Bugs for you, Johnny, and you know what? They're way healthier anyway. Don't get me on a tangent, though. All right, so where are we going to go today? I'm not really sure. There's like so much. I get up every morning and I start scrolling through and I'm like, holy crap. You know what? Let's maybe I can make it through all this, but here's a story that I caught right after the show. It always happens too. It was right after the show. And caught my attention. It's an older story. It's a couple years old. But of course, those transhumanist news groups that I belong to, I read all their stuff. I try to be really careful, though, when I post it because I don't want them tracking me down. We do hear this because this, we talk about our children and how propaganda is kind of shaping the future just by shaping their minds. And they're trying in school. I told you about the homework assignment that they brought home about the ethics of using animals to grow organs to transplant into humans. And I mean, that was right after we were talking about that. Or Google, using the kids to find out whether or not they'd get into a self-driving car. Well, listen to this. A transhumanist wants to teach kids that death is wrong. Now, we've spent quite a lot of time looking at them cheating death, looking at ways for them to cure death as a disease. That's kind of really the goal here, the ways to live forever, upload yourself into the cloud. And let's get another body printed with our synthetic sequenced genome. There was a story that came out just as I was surfing before I came on air. Weiss Institute, which is the home of the Robo-Bees, Harvard, of course. They have now, and that's where they were doing that origami. They learned to do origami manufacturing. That's where they're creating now en masse these mini Robo-Bee drones. That's the home of them all. Remember, Harvard's also the one who organized those 150 scientists coming to talk about sequencing a synthetic human genome. But Harvard just released a video, and this video is pretty amazing. See this laser-assisted method that allows metal to be 3D printed in mid-air. Yeah, and they're 3D printing them in mid-air in this video in the shape of butterfly wings. This is the institute that dubs itself the place that, the best way to make a technology is to mimic nature. And they're printing with these, I don't know if they're metal or silver nanoparticles with a laser right into mid-air. One of these days is going to be like, boop. We're going to have these little, think about it, we're going to have our little mini drones appearing out of the blue. All they got to do is take their 3D printing laser into the air, and every 2 seconds, bloop, 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 a little autonomous Robo-Bee prints out and takes off to go collect some surveillance. I gotta tell you, this is not the type of stuff I need to see when I wake up, take my first cup of coffee in the morning, because it just starts the nightmare roadshow in my brain playing. But gotta tell you guys, some pretty insane stuff. So we've been looking at now, the synthetic genome they've been talking about, talking how they wanted to clone famous people by sequencing their genome and then, doing 3D printed laser DNA. We talked about that. That was that Heinz, whatever his name was, the Cambrian Genomics. They got that going on. But now, let's talk about this. The transhumanists now want to teach kids that, what? Death is wrong. Yeah, let's shift the discussion now. Death is no longer a natural thing that happens. There are no cycles anymore. Of course, the 4 seasons and circadian rhythms will be taken away from us soon as well. And they're very, very important to the functioning of our body, as I've been reading. There's a big deal. When you start messing up your sleep time and that, which I've been messing with for a few years now, you're going to find out it causes all kinds of weird issues in your body. You need to get sleep and you need to be on a schedule. Otherwise, it throws all of that beautiful, perfectly balanced orchestration that happens inside your body that's called life and healthiness. When your body is in harmony, you're healthy. When you throw it out of whack, you start to get sick. But, eventually, they're going to tell us that anything that's biological is wrong. Dying is wrong. I mean, death is the beginning of rebirth. It's where the raw materials come from. It's how it happens in space and on planet Earth and throughout all of the kingdoms of living organisms on this planet. Death is required for life. And as these tech billionaires are funding these longevity projects and the defying death projects and live forever, we want to be gods. Get rid of all of the defective humans. Make sure we identify who's got the best genes to reproduce in the future so we can control that in a petri dish. And then you won't even have to have children after what we were looking at yesterday. Because if we can make synthetic human genomes, and if We can upload what exists inside your brain as you, your personality, your thoughts, your knowledge to the cloud. You know, every time you die, they just print you out a new copy of yourself and you download into the new, young, wonderful body, which you'd probably have all kinds of face options and everything. You know, in the beginning, it'll be just one body every time. It'll get kind of boring. But at some point, you'll be able to be like George Jetson for your face and body every time you want to reincarnate. We'll call it synthetic reincarnation. You know, then death will be wrong. Then nature will be wrong. You know, when we're living on a Mars base somewhere, we're not going to have the same 24-hour cycle that the human body has come to work on. And I know the body can adjust, but I'm sure that probably evolutionarily living on this planet since we evolved, our bodies probably work best on 24 hours. So Mars, I don't know what Mars rotational period is, but it's probably going to be different. So you know what? They just artificially, they had these windows, these skylights that literally when you look at them, they got some sort of LED in them that like plays I don't know if it displays a movie or what it does, but holy crap, does it look real. When you're looking, it's specially used for basements is where they're using them. I was checking these out the one time. And it looks just like a skylight. And it's timed. It's a smart window. It's timed with the sun. So when it's up there, the sun is actually peering through the skylight exactly where it should be in the sky, except it's digital. It's digitally displayed on the LED that's pretending to be glass inside of the skylight. So you can put that down in your basement, and it looks like you actually have a skylight out to the roof, but you don't. I imagine them using some sort of technology like that, like smart walls and smart windows, when they decide that they're finally going to get off world, that they're going to go somewhere else, because we're still going to need to keep that tie, at least while we're still biological, to keep that tie to the cycles here on the planet. So sleep cycle, death cycle, the cycles of biology, the ecosystems that we have, not just in nature, between animals, plants, insects, and earth, which we do. We should all be living together in harmony. It's a problem. That's why stuff is so messed up now. But also, from a micro perspective, you know, on our bodies, we have this orchestration between all these different systems, but it's not even just our organs anymore, right? We've discovered there's more bacteria and different kinds of bacteria that live in all kinds of different places that all work together and fight, but they all try to live in harmony within us. I think he said there were 3 trillion bacteria. There were only 3 million human cells. We got more bacteria in our bodies than we even have human cells, but it's all working together, and that's the key. So you know what? Damn it. Death is wrong. Humanity is wrong. Biology is wrong. It's all wrong now because it's causing climate change. That's what I figure they're going to do. All right, let's read this. I've rambled long enough. Transhumanist wants to teach kids that death is wrong. Gennady Stolrov is afraid to die, and he is not afraid to say so. And he strongly believes that humans won't have to die, or at least will live much, much longer in the future. Writer and transhumanist activist Stolrov sees death as something that can be solved by technology and science, and one day it'll be possible to extend your life indefinitely. And to that end, he is trying to buck the cultural perception that mortality is inevitable, and he's starting with kids. Stolrov published the children's book Death is Wrong in November of 2014. And Zoltan Istvan, which we've had Zoltan on UCY, Michael Cross had him on. He is running on the Transhumanist Party for president, by the way, right now. Zoltan Istvan, author of The Transhumanist Wager, unearthed the story in a post on Psychology Today. Now Stolarov is promoting the book with an Indiegogo campaign, trying to crowdfund $5,000 to print and distribute 1,000 copies of the book and get the anti-death word out. Death is wrong. Mainstream remains pervaded by the old death acceptance arguments like, oh, but everything's got to die. And look, I just went through this myself less than a week ago. Nobody wants to see someone or something they love die. It's got to be one of the most heartbreaking moments ever. But, you know, I spent a lot of my life, even back in college, doing literature and whatever. I mean, I dissected thousands of works. It's what it's all about. Everything is about cycles. You know, even, you know, when you look at down to the science of things and we start looking at light and sound and, you know, in general, waves and how everything works and frequencies, everything is cyclical. We have pulses. There's order out of chaos. If we remove a part of that cycle, the cycle now dies. It breaks. You now have a broken machine. And we seem to think we know everything. Not we, you and I, but we as in humanity. Lunatics running the show. We know everything. We're going to recreate what has been working so beautifully on its own without our intervention for millions of years and make something new. The life extension movement is one faction of the transhumanist creed, the idea that we can transcend the limitations of being a human being by embracing technological progress. Run away screaming. Both radical ideas are gaining traction thanks in no small part to Google's ding ding Calico Moonshot project. I've talked about Calico many times. And Google's life sciences division, Kurzweil and Tommy Insel and all the DARPA people are involved here. An initiative to study and defeat aging and eventually even mortality itself. Google, which has also raised eyebrows by hiring who? Oh, yes, renowned futurist lunatic and AI expert Ray Kurzweil as its director of engineering, has breathed new life into the H plus movement. So I guess that's what they're calling it. Is that for humans plus, like synthetic bodies that don't die? So much so, in fact, that just this week, a handful of transhumanists gathered outside of the Googleplex with signs that say immortality now, Viva Calico, and Google, please solve death. How twisted is this? Google is a technology company, people. Google created a search engine. Google should not be making us immortal. Okay, there's something very fucking wrong here. I say something else to Google. Like, here's my middle finger. Like, I get so angry over this. And that smug asshole, what's his name? Larry Page? Is that what his name is? No, Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt. He's the head board member of Alphabet. You know, and all their little kitschy lines. I've been watching Google for 20 years now, and I got to tell you, I always said Google was evil. Says this is merely the beginning, wrote the blog Pro-Actionary Transhumanist about the protest. This was the first ever street action to occur for transhumanism in the U.S. Oh, which will soon turn into a stepping stone for future actions, because, of course, nobody wants to die. So step right up. Let us inject you with the plastic DNA we just developed. Speaking of which, hold the phone. You know, you guys, I always have multiple computers loaded with stories, and that's what I didn't get a chance to do, was hit my notebook upstairs where I ended the evening last night. Because I had like 4 different things queued up that I wanted to talk about, but hold the phone because I want to find it. And we'll cue this one up as the next story. I know it was here. We had it. I think Heather Callaghan posted it on Natural Blaze last night, and it was a story written by written by John Rappaport about and I mean, we've talked about all this, of course. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but it's interesting hearing someone else's take. I got a message Clint Richardson. I want to see maybe if I can get him on Friday to just chat about some of the lunacy. All right, anyway, so I found the story. This is merely the beginning, so don't worry, because here it all comes. Transhumanist is growing an international social movement, gaining speed as more and more people begin realizing the full potential of scientific and technological advances toward humanity's next evolutionary steps. And that's what they're talking about. Like, this is the new evolution to human and DNA 2.0 as they change us without our knowledge. Some dumbasses will sit there and embrace it all, but most of us have no idea. We found out when we were reading a whole bunch of stuff in the past. It was an interview with Kurzweil, actually, where he came out and he said that this evolution, quote unquote, is already well along its way. And remember, they've been doing GMO crap in our food and that for 20 plus years that we never even really knew. We should have known, but we didn't. I don't think they really came out and told us. Every once in a while, you'd find out that something came out and, maybe we pulled it off the market or maybe we just didn't label it because it doesn't matter anymore. Remember, and we'll see this today. I couldn't even believe this. I don't think I even opened this. Damn it. Oh, Jewel. Oh, we'll have to find that too. A story came out last night right as I was going to bed and I was going to post it. I'm like, oh man, people are going to freak out if I post this without any type of commentary on it. But there's some new study that was paid for by yours and my tax dollars. Well, they took a whole ton of scientists and had them look through 30 years of scientific journals posted, printed, research done on GMOs. And they've determined that what? Yes, huge analysis determines that genetically engineered crops are safe for the humans and for the environment per your tax dollars, so shut up and eat it. Like, I just couldn't even believe it. My blood pressure went through the roof, and I said, it is time to go to bed now. We'll get there, though. Anyway, Stolarov, who thinks that we need to start gaining speed as more people realize that we're moving toward this new evolution. Stolarov's strategy to groom the next generation to grow up thinking that they might not have to die is unique and a little bit more than creepy. And the way he sees it, the biggest hurdle to conquering death is that it is physically impossible. Biotech is working on taking care of that, but rather a pervasive cultural perception that is not right. It shouldn't happen. His book makes a philosophical case as to why death is the enemy. And on the front cover, it shows a boy telling off the Grim Reaper. It weaves in antidotes from the author's own childhood in Belarus. Yeah, that was where it got the most of the Chernobyl radiation. Maybe that's what happens. Stolarov also bucks the idea that aging inevitably means we inch closer to death. He said other life extension advocates make a point to differentiate between aging, the passions of time, and the sentience, which is the biological breakdown of the body. One has to essentially achieve biological youthfulness a reversal of sentience. I've never really seen that word. SENESCENCE. Spell that one 3 times fast. Wow. And they say that means the biological breakdown of the body. I'll have to look that one up later. In order to age is in such a way as to not increase one's own probability of death over time. And, and that's one of the things they've been working on. We discussed that yesterday many times before, is telomere length. And if they can keep your telomere ends nice and long, your aging won't happen as quickly. And that one CEO, I mentioned her yesterday, Elizabeth something was her name. She had injected herself with some genetically modified genes. And I don't know if she actually, I think she took her own genome and made some tweaks and then injected herself. She said that she was already seeing youthful effects by genetically modifying herself, which is, talk about lunacy. Like, do anything for money. It's just insane. So they're pretty sure that if you lengthen those telomeres, you're going to live forever, or at least for a lot longer. Anyway, for a lot of people, tampering with the human body and the brain is a line that shouldn't be crossed. Hey, I'm on that team. But the transhumanist movement is going strong. Obviously, society has been searching for some kind of fountain of youth for centuries. They have been. I'm not going to take that away from them. But now modern developments like cell rejuvenation, mind-controlled robotic limbs, and trends like DIY cyborgs and body hacking, we talked about those, and the realization that sci-fi concepts like uploading your brain to a computer could actually be possible are making it seem less and less like a pipe dream. Yeah, your nightmares have all just about come true. Stolaroff will speak about his book at Transhumanism Visions 2.0 conference in California, which also happens to be on Future Day. No, there was a Future Day. He says ultimately there is an evolutionary dynamic. The people who choose not to terminate their own lives are the ones who are going to determine the course of our culture, our philosophy, and everybody else's attitudes. Wacky as this sounds, he may be right. So, hey, you know what? If you die and give up, then you're going to just give it all up to the lunatics. So you better be trying to figure out a way not to get old. This is insanity. So now we have all these mandatory new vaccines. I saw that they are now spraying across New York City as of a couple days ago because, oh my God, with our 39 degrees and snow, we have this outbreak of Zika mosquitoes. We're so afraid here in New York of Zika. Oh my God. They're spraying. They're spraying all over New York. But I just saw yesterday now that they cloned Zika virus to make new vaccines that we're going to start rolling out to everyone. And of course, you knew they were. Zika vaccines, hopefully you have some good investments because that's going to become a new mandatory because there's just such an epidemic. And of course, Zika has gone from a disease that didn't bother anybody, that didn't really cause much of anything, that no one really paid attention to because it wasn't a bad disease, that now, oh my God, brain damage, half brains, myelin sheath damage, mental issues. And I just saw, man, now they're just spinning it up somewhere in there. There was like this list of all these things now Zika's going to cause. It's like the big boogeyman that Ebola or bird flu or whatever the illness du jour is. It's just spun up now. We're getting $1.9 billion from Obama to help battle Zika. And we got 24/7 emergency staff lined up to help you. Well, story out of Natural Blaze. John Rappaport wrote this. New vaccine will permanently alter human DNA. Now, if you hadn't been listening to the show, you'd probably go, oh, John, a little bit of a lunatic there, but no, he's right. Listen to this. Why is the government so maniacal about injecting vaccines? Consider this article in light of the accelerating push to mandate and enforce vaccinations across the planet. And they are healthy humans. It's all about doing the good for all. It's all about being a part of this new system. If you're not vaccinated, you're a danger. It means you're human 1.0 is what that means. And you're a danger. You're rogue DNA. Consider this New York Times article from 3/15/15, Protection Without a Vaccine. It describes the frontier of research, and here are the key quotes that illustrate the use of synthetic genes to, quote, protect against disease. Now, we've even gone further. We've looked at the artificial immune system that DARPA has contracted somebody to build. We also looked at Billy Gates with the Synologics becoming an investor in that company that is creating synthetic bacteria to go in and detect inflammation within your body and then create some sort of search and destroy mechanism, create some new cells or whatever it's going to produce in your gut to go out and be a real-time sentry and cure you. Kurzweil and his nanobots in your blood from Google's Verily Life Sciences division, their Calico project. This is all related. So anyway, here are the key quotes that illustrate the use of synthetic genes to protect against disease while changing the genetic makeup of humans. And this is not science fiction. Quote, this is out of this New York Times article. By delivering synthetic genes into the muscles of experimental monkeys, the scientists are essentially re-engineering the animals to resist disease. Now, we've already seen, they're talking about experimental monkeys. I don't know why. I just read the insert, started digging into it, but the Gardasil vaccine, guys, that has virus-like particles. Those are synthetic viruses that they load with nanotechnology payloads and then inject into your daughter or your son to prevent cancer. That then goes in and makes changes to their bodies. We do not want to be injecting synthetic who the hell knows what. I don't want to be human 2.0. And it literally, we've discovered that any of this crap that's going into us is literally changing our genetic makeup. Even our emotions change our genetic makeup. The food we eat changes our genetic makeup. Whether or not you get enough sunshine changes your genetic makeup. So let's inject a whole bunch of shit. We don't even know what it does or how it works or what 20 years down the line it's going to do. Let's just see what happens because it's going to be good for you, Johnny. By delivering synthetic genes into the muscle of experimental monkeys, the scientists are essentially re-engineering the animals to resist disease. The sky is the limit, says Michael Fazan, rubbing his hands together, an immunologist at Scripps and the lead author of this new study. The first human trial based on the strategy, called immunoprophylaxis by gene transfer, or IGT for short, is underway and several new ones are planned. IGT is altogether different from traditional vaccination. It is instead a form of gene therapy. So we're not going to be getting vaccines and stimulating your immune system with an adjuvant anymore. No, we're going to be doing actual gene therapies to take care of any of those defective cells. We'll replace them with a synthetic. The synthetic can go in and detect, destroy, fix. Don't worry about it. These genes are placed into viruses and injected into human tissue, usually muscle. Scientists isolate these genes that produce powerful antibodies against certain diseases and then synthesize artificial versions. There's a punchline in this. The viruses then, and we talked about this is how genetic modification works. They use viruses because viruses are very well adept at searching a cell and finding any chink in the armor and then getting in. Well, now they have, right, synthetic viruses that do pretty well at that as well. The viruses invade human cells with their DNA artificial payload And the synthetic gene is incorporated then into the recipient's own DNA. This is still in this New York Times article. Alterations of the human genetic makeup then could happen. Yes, they could. And if all goes well, the new genes then instruct the cells to begin manufacturing powerful new antibodies. Yeah, they're going to hijack your cells. David Baltimore, in an article from the Times, says, still, Dr. Baltimore says that he's envisioning that some people might be leery of a vaccination strategy that means altering their own DNA, even if it prevents a potentially fatal disease. Yes, those resistant consumers, we're always such a thorn in everybody's side. And of course, some people might be leery, especially if they have 2 or 3 working brain cells. But let's take this a little bit further. Under the cover of preventing disease, and all good covert ops float a laudatory goal, of course. Yes, because it's to save the human race, they say. Vaccines are also ideal carriers for all sorts of genes that would be permanently incorporated into the human structure. The enormous tonnage of propaganda about vaccines and resultant mandatory laws that enforce vaccination, of course, all the butt patting and slippery sliding cash between hands helps a lot as well. They create a powerful channel along which re-engineering is eminently possible. Synthetic genes, of course, ones that we won't take knowingly, can be injected into the billions of humans. And they would form a grand experiment to create an altered species. And guys, I really, really, really think this is already very well underway. This grand experiment could be compartmentalized, for example, secretly. Genes 1 through 6 would be injected into Group A and geolocation B. And genes 7 through 12 would be injected into Group B and location 2. And so on and so on. And vaccine recipients will then be subjected to ongoing surveillance to gauge the results. And I mean, they've been doing stuff like that already for generations. On various pretexts, members of these groups of them would be brought into clinics. And of course, we have free Obamacare everywhere for examination and tests to discover markers that purportedly reveal that their body's response to these genetic alterations were successful. Are these people stronger or weaker? Did they grow wings? Did they get x-ray vision like we talked about yesterday? Do they report behavioral changes? Are they psychotic? Do they eat bugs? Like Spider-Man? Oh. And of course, and this is something that we've talked about before, there is no informed consent. And if you ask your doctor to see the insert of what they want to put into your kid, you better believe you're going to get the stink eye, and then you're going to get exactly what I did. The doctor looking at me going, oh, you're one of those parents. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? I'm one of those parents? What? Please tell me what one of those parents are. One of those parents that cares about what poisons you're trying to tell me are safe to put in my kid? One of those parents who doesn't want bovine serum, formaldehyde, SV40 monkey cancer virus in my kid? Yeah, one of those parents. And what would be the objective of this lunatic research program? Asked John. Well, they would vary. On a simplified level, there would be 2. Create weaker, more docile, more obedient, more dependent humans. Well, yeah, I mean, as they're damaging your ability to think, your immune system, your gut flora, your communication between all your systems. As you get sicker instead of healthier, as you get autoimmune diseases and your body starts to consume itself because it doesn't know where the poison is, because the poison's now everywhere in your cells. But on the other side, they can create healthier and more intelligent and more talented humans, better breeding stock, more in their vision. And obviously, the results of the latter experiments will be applied to the chosen few. And clearly, some of this research will be carried out inside the military, and I think we have established a lot of that. Who? DARPA. Secrecy is easier to maintain, and the aim to produce better soldiers is a long-standing goal of the Pentagon and DARPA. And it's all about the soldiers. They're going to tell us it's bioterror, and we got to step right up because they're going to fix us. In a global vaccine experiment of the type I'm describing, this is John Rappaport, has another bonus for planners. The people who fall ill or die can be written off as having suffered from various diseases and disorders which have nothing to do with vaccines. This is their standard operating procedure. Of course it is. I don't know if I'm going to read this whole story because, John, we've pretty much established this. But notice, here, we'll read this little blurb. Here's another gem from Gregory Stock, former director of the program in Medicine, Technology, and Society at UCLA's School of Medicine. Quote, even if half the world's species were lost during genetic experiments, enormous diversity would still remain. And even those in the distant future will look back on this period of history and say, what a bunch of lunatics they were. No, they will likely see it not as an era where the natural environment was impoverished, but as an age where a new plethora of never before seen forms, some biological, some technological, and some a combination of the two, burst onto the scene. And we best serve ourselves as well as future generations by focusing on the short-term consequences of our actions rather than on our vague notions about the needs of the distant future. Well, notice the scientist is kind of speaking about ethics. A significant number of such experts now have their own lunatic version of what is right and wrong. And we looked at, speaking of ethics, that was with the meeting of 150 scientists meeting at Harvard. It was all about to discuss the ethics, which of course we're still waiting for the paper on that. They've said they've done all kinds of that. The ethics of creating a full synthetic human genome. With vaccines that permanently alter human genetic makeup on the horizon and given the corporate and government agency penchant for secrecy, we are already inhabiting a brave new world, and it is not a distant prospect. Every genetic innovation is aimed at bringing us closer to a stimulus response world and further away from freedom. Right. They're going to own us at a molecular and an atomic and a genetic level. And the struggle comes down to who controls the philosophy, not the science. Is each human merely and only a system waiting to be re-engineered, or is he something far more inhabiting a physical form? Well, of course, these days, the college faculty department considered to be at least important, the most useless, and a mere appendage waiting for those with wisdom to pull out of its misery and kill it off. It's the philosophy department. The philosophy department's the one who's sitting there thinking up what this really all means. But now that leaves the argument to the rich billionaires, to the propaganda, to the large corporations, like good old Bill Gates or George Soros or Rockefeller, the Pope. The Pope's been getting in on this game. I saw now he's talking about female deacons and priests and stuff. Hey, let's just mix it all up. Just take that big stirring stick. There's no genders anymore. There's no death anymore. You know, you crazy people, we're going to fix mental illness too with a smart app. You know, that messy thing called reproduction. Don't worry about that either. We'll take care of that. This is just unbelievable. But don't think it is for your own benefit. And here we go. This is paid for with your tax dollars. Huge analysis determines genetically engineered crops are safe for the human and the environment. GMOs are one of the topics everybody seems to have a vocal opinion on, depending on who you talk to. they are either the key to feeding our population or the ultimate threat to society. Now, listen to some of the things they found out in here, though, because I had to laugh. All the reasons that they were trying to sell us GMOs actually proved that there's no benefit. Now, after a 2-year analysis of almost 900 journal articles on the past 30 years of genetically modified crops, has weighed in on the debate, concluding that there is no evidence that GE crops are unsafe to eat or do damage to the environment. Now, the fact that they're basing this research on journal articles that haven't properly been vetted, ones that have been proven to be fraudulent, haven't been removed. The FDA has been letting a lot of fraudulent research be published, and we find out there's payola for some of these to get into some of these publications sponsored by the same corporations who are trying to prove how healthy they are. There's really, you can't gauge anything by the research. But the fact that they're coming out saying that there's no connection, listen to last week. We had 4 shows looking at what it did, and actually, if we could get there today, and we probably won't, but maybe we'll get to one clip about glyphosate. All right, let's say screw genetic modification. Let's just say it's been modified to be able to be sprayed Roundup Ready. What about all the damage of all that extra pesticide? Just from being a pesticide spewing into the environment. What about that damage or the contamination or the fact that we have glyphosate in our rainwater and our breast milk? But then add to that everything that we found about the damage it does to your gut flora. And then what damage to the gut flora does to the rest of the body. I don't know how 200 scientists, 2-year analysis, 900 journals. They don't say how many scientists. 20 scientists here, 400-page report. 20 scientists who didn't see any connection whatsoever between any damage at all to the environment or to people or to biology or anything. Yet Dr. Huber, with 50 years working for the feds, working for Cornell University, working for all kinds of DOD insider, the specialist still on the Russian biowarfare program, crops, disease, animal disease. Dr. Huber, who spent 50 years researching glyphosate, who's ringing the red bell. And even his research didn't show that there was anything at all wrong. How is that even possible? Says it shows that after a 2-year analysis of almost 900 journal articles over the past 30 years of genetic modification, they concluded that there was no evidence at all that GE crops are unsafe to eat or do damage to the environment. It also showed, though, that there was little support for the claims that genetically modified crops, and this is ding ding, something that they've been trying to sell this and jam it down our throats forever because we're overpopulated, quote unquote, and we don't have enough food, quote unquote. We need to use GMOs to boost our production. Well, they showed that they have not boosted crop yields or improved the economic outcomes for farmers, suggesting that we're still a long way off finding the best way to use and disseminate GMOs. So interesting. They found that the propaganda selling point of GMOs is just not true. In a 400-page report that was conducted by 20 scientists and commissioned by the U.S. National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine as part of an attempt to figure out how to regulate crops and GMO food going forward. Because, there's such a lot of disinformation out there, and all of us resistant consumers who don't want to give it to our children have caused such a ruckus that they had to prove us wrong. Whether you like it or not, it says the reality is that since the 1980s, Scientists have been genetically modifying crops to enhance their favorable characteristics such as vitamin content, yield, and or pest resistance. Flavor, savor tomato. And this is simply a faster and more precise version of selective breeding, which humans have been doing, of course, for millennia, dramatically altering what food crops look like in the process. But because many of these GM seeds contained all new DNA code that could, in theory, be patented and sold back to poor farmers at a higher cost, I don't know if that's theory. I thought that's what they were doing, like the Terminator seeds. Many have been concerned about their presence in our farms and our fields, and not to mention the fact that they haven't been around long enough for longitudinal studies to be conducted on the long-term effects they have on our health or the surrounding environment. Right, like 20 generations. Let's make sure that this doesn't cause an issue. And actually, wait, it gets even better. Despite that, over a bunch of years, a lot of research has concluded that GM crops are safe and can be a great benefit to humanity. But that's done little to relieve the public's concern of those resistant consumers. Which is one of the reasons now that this new analysis was commissioned. This is why we spent tax dollars, and it looked into several aspects of the debate by those tinfoil hat-wearing lunatics and trawled more than 900 articles along with hours of expert testimony and public submissions to come to the following conclusions. 1, health risk. Well, the committee carefully searched all available research studies for persuasive evidence of the adverse health effects directly attributable to the consumption of foods derived from genetically engineered crops, but we found none. Beyond that, there was also evidence that genetically engineered crops had actually benefited human health by reducing insecticide poisoning and helping to increase vitamin levels in developing countries. And it was, what did we just read about? Where they genetically modified something to produce extra vitamin A for, those poor starving Africans. But I don't see how they reduced insecticide poisoning. How about all the BT cotton Indian farmers that have been dying with these big sores all over their bodies from spraying all that crap on Roundup BT ready crops? Number 2, effects on the environment. Quote, the use of insect-resistant or herbicide-resistant crops did not reduce the overall diversity of plant or insect life on farms. And sometimes insect-resistant crops resulted in increased insect diversity. One of the biggest concerns has been that genetically engineered genes will spread into the wild population. And while studies have shown that, yes, this can occur, well, don't worry about it because there have been no adverse effects reported from this gene flow of mad science gone mad into the Wild West, letting the genie out of the bottle. And that was concluded by the report. We're going to look at something tomorrow about some of showing Dr. Huber talked about killing all the beneficial bacteria and how antibiotic glyphosate is. And one of the things that they're discovering is that this whole, Obama had this executive order back in July of 2 years ago, I believe, to combat super bugs because everything's becoming antibiotic resistant. Well, there's a lot of research showing now that it's not antibiotics that we ingested and that were injected into our animals that are causing that. It's glyphosate being sprayed all over the environment and in our body that's making now these super antibiotic resistant strains of viruses and bacteria. Well, viruses don't respond to antibiotics, but bacteria in particular. Lastly, but not least, impacts on the farmers. Don't worry about it. The committee examined data on overall rates and prices of soybeans, cotton, and corn in the U.S. for the decades preceding GM crops. And guess what? some of them made money. They also came with extra training, and they're expensive. And all right, guys, make sure you stick around. Miss Lonnie Clark's got an interview with Miss Helen Caldecott up next. Make sure you stick around. It's Wednesday, all kinds of live radio, and you have an awesome day, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody take care.